one here. I have him declare your glory. And the country. Today we agree with our creation. He's Lord of heaven and earth. Today we agree with our creation that Jesus is Lord of heaven and earth. We agree that His Father is Lord of heaven and earth. The angels in heaven say, holy, 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 the Lord of hosts, you and earth full of His glory. I can't tell exactly, but we're going to get into a study about Jerusalem, a burdensome stone. For those of you who are acquainted with prophecies about Israel and about Jerusalem, you might have heard this a long time. One time ago I was doing a CD and the Lord told me about something having to do with prophecy, and He said, put it on a CD that it can be for the next generation, because the people who know it are not teaching it. He said people don't know it, and who know it are not teaching it, and then eventually those who know it will die out, and then the world will be lost. Okay, so today I have some of these things I'm talking about today. We want these things to be recorded. I know it won't be long before Jesus will come, but until He comes, we'll keep on speaking about the Word. And what I'm saying here today is not because of a matter of trying to scare somebody into that the Lord is coming. Because if you are scared that the Lord is at hand, it means that you're not a Christian. Right? You're not saved. Because if you're, are you doing something wrong, what it is? You know what I'm saying? If you're at home and you hear the gate or something open, you hear your father driving or you hear mommy coming in, it doesn't bother you, right? In fact, you would run to the door to greet him. But if you are doing something wrong, then maybe you'd try to find a place where you can, flush it down the toilet or put it in the closet or something and hide it away in the cupboard. And later on, when they're not looking, you might take it outside or dispose of it. Right? Or if you're doing something that's wrong, then you might just, because it catch you by surprise. But if you are in tune, waiting for mommy to come home, waiting for daddy to come home, it does not intimidate you. Right? So, don't say today that, you have preachers like myself who are talking about things pertaining to Armageddon and about the end of the world. Yes, the end of the world comes with, goes with the coming of the Lord. Because if He doesn't come back, then there won't be an end of this world. So, if we are waiting for Him to come, and this is what we desire, then we are not going to be scared, we are going to be overjoyed. Right? So if we don't know the day nor the hour, but we know the season. Right? And I know when the time is coming for your birthday, say you know the day then, right? But at least you know like a certain time, and you get really excited. Okay? And if it is a birthday or something like that for somebody you really love, you get excited too. And you know what you might do? You might start planning activities. Maybe you're planning to have throw a party. You might be planning what kind of gift, right? And why these things. Why do we pay so much attention to things pertaining to this life that will perish? Because it just goes in a cycle. When you finish that party and whenever you have an activity, at the end of it, you have a clean up. Right? Sometimes nobody even want to clean up. And the responsibility is left on maybe one or two people who have to clean up the plates and the pots and everything. Right? By the time when they finish, they're spent. They might even fall asleep on the sofa. Right? Because all of that. And they might feel a sense of satisfaction that, well, at least we entertain the people and the people were happy. And of course, and sometimes afterward they look forward to it and say, well, next year we do it again. Okay. But eternity, there is nothing about that. Eternity, we're talking about joys unceasing. Not something which is going to just happen here and then it's maybe next year again. And if we put so much emphasis on things pertaining to this life, how much more eternal life? Right? So I'm saying, we are looking into this word here, and the scripture says, oh my God, the Bible speaks of Jerusalem as a burdensome stone, right? And I want to look at a verse here. I didn't put it in the thing, but when I wrote the post, but I just got it here, and it says here, Zephaniah chapter 2 verse 1, it says, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. If there's ever a time we have gotten back to that same thing we're getting back, Israel is a nation that's not desired. People are looking at Israel like it's the biggest problem there is on earth. Somebody said that the United Nations has sanctioned Israel more than maybe all nations in the world combined. And nations which have genocide, nations which oppress their people and all these things, they have not got these sanctions. And the United Nations, it mattered was Israel anyway. Because before, when it was the League of Nations, right, Israel declared themselves, they were holding back on Israel becoming a nation. Right? And then came the United Nations, and Israel could not wait on them to declare themselves to be a nation. If they were waiting until now. So they took matters in their own hands and made a declaration of independence. Just like what happened in the United States. Right? And it was the same thing. Right? It was the same kind of thing. Right? With the British realizing that there was no future with the British. But for some reason, excuse me, that although America revolted from under British rule, that Britain still sought to be a friend of America. And to, if there are battles and all these wars and all that, America came to their help. Okay. With Israel, they have not sought to have that kind of affinity. Because as the Bible said, our nation not desired. They did not want Israel to become a nation. Okay? Now when they were scattered throughout the world, because the sins of their forefathers, and they came down doing the same thing, despising the Messiah and all that, they were scattered throughout the world. But God said that He would bring them back to the land. He said that He would bring them back to the land. And so, His word must be performed. His word must be fulfilled. Okay? So today, when you see that what's going on, and I'm following these things very clearly, following them up. All the complaints. They just had a war there which was about, 10 days or something like that with Hamas. And now, more than ever, more nations are jumping on the bandwagon for the destruction of Israel. Right? Now, the big controversy goes on about Jerusalem. And we go over to Zechariah chapter, what verse did I put in this thing? Zechariah chapter 7, right? And the scripture said here, no, where did I put in this thing? Zechariah chapter 12, that's where it is. And the scripture says here, verse 2, Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. So, people are today, they're not going to be gathered against New York City. Right? They're not going to be gathered against Rome. They're not going to be gathered against London, against Paris. Right? They have fought many wars, right, in World War II especially. London was a very important place that Hitler wanted to conquer. And he battered them down, right? You might have heard of the Battle of Britain. So he battered them down and decimated their air force, right? And to the place where they lost their planes. They had to make planes out of foolishness, as it were, to make it look like they had planes. Right? Now, what we were saying last week at the time about when Hitler was fighting with the Blitzkrieg War, he fought in such a way that he attacked in strategic places. And he attacked with such speed that you're not supposed to have the chance to recover. You're supposed to have the chance to go back and make more tanks, or make more planes, or make more nothing. And that's what happened with London, with Britain. But of course, Britain was that big world power that they said the sun never set on the British Empire, because it was everywhere, all over the world. But Britain lost its glory. And one of the things that Britain really had was the United States, where they used to control it. And when America revolted from under their control, okay, Britain started to decline, but Britain was still a big power. And Hitler wanted, he said, I rather smash Britain like that than just smash them out. Then I try to get something where we can fight against the United States, right, which was much harder for him to do. Seeing that the United States also was on the other side of the globe, okay? But I'm saying to you that the controversy is not about Washington. There are controversies in Washington, right? There are people who burn American flags, right? And they burn the Israeli flag too, the Israelite flag. And they're saying that death to America, death to Israel. But despite the fact that they're saying death to America, they know it's a much more difficult thing for them to try to surround Washington, right? It would be not a simple matter, right? Because the United States would come out with a force against these enemies. That's why I say right now. I expect that would happen. But with Israel now, we're a small nation, the land mass is much less than what David used to rule over, or Solomon used to rule over. Because the kingdom of Israel in the time of David was on both sides of the bank of Jordan, right? The first part of Israel was conquered by Moses, right? Some people maybe don't know that. Then the second part on the other side of Jordan, which is going back to the Mediterranean Sea, right, was conquered under Joshua, okay? Now the first part, which the Bible calls the Gilead, right, God and half tribe of Manasseh, and, right, they took that side. And the Bible talks about the mountains of Gilead. If I'm not mistaken, that's where Moses died too. Because Moses died before they crossed the Jordan River. So I'm saying to you that Israel was big in those days. It was a massive. Now, those territory are not ruled by Israel. So Israel has a much smaller land mass. But they're trying to develop a lot of technology to defend themselves over the years. But they need God. Okay? And God is saying that I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup of trembling. Right? You ever seen when somebody take up something and they have nervous problems, with nerve system problems, and you see the whole hand just shaking like this, like shaking like this, right? And if they're trying to drink out of a cup, the tea or the drink, whatever, the water might start spilling out of it because they try to drink from it, keep shaking like that. Bible said God will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling, right? And he said, when they shall be in the siege against it, so there will be an attack upon Jerusalem, right? And then he goes on to say, he made Jerusalem a burdensome stone, right? So there were people who are bothering themselves about Jerusalem constantly. And this is what is happening in the world today, right? You cannot afford to ignore it, because this is a definite sign of the end of the age, right? The end of this age and the coming of the Lord. We cannot afford to ignore what is happening in Jerusalem. The Bible said, it said here, all that burn themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. Though all the world, right? All the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And why? Okay? Why they be gathered against it? This is the final battle that Satan wants to have against the church. And when I say the church, what I'm saying is that I shouldn't even maybe say the church, but I'm just saying to you that this is the final battle that Satan has to destroy people. They try it with plagues, they try it with war, and to try to fight against the purpose of God. Okay? Because the purpose of God is that Zion must be redeemed. Okay? But it cannot be redeemed by the bow and arrow. It cannot be redeemed by the horse. Right? And the chariot. It cannot be redeemed by Israel's iron dome. Okay? It cannot be redeemed by their nuclear reactor. It cannot be redeemed by their fighter planes either. Okay? So we have something that's going on which does not even synchronize really, because they are trusting in their weapons that the weapons can defend them. But what's the big deal? You have a gun, the other person have a gun too. Right? Israel is saying that they don't want Iran to have a bomb because they already said that one bomb they need to drop and Israel will just be blimped out. But as I said to you before, these nations are seeking for their own glory. Right? Seeking for their own glory. Russia, there was a massive nation one time. The Chinese, they were an empire one time, right? And the Iran, which is Persia, Iran empire that ruled the world, right? Babylon, Iraq, they ruled the world. And when Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, okay, so all of these people want to get back the glory of the empire they had before, right? Now Turkey's pushing very hard against Israel, right? That they should eliminate Israel. Yeah, they are doing it, right? Because it was, they used to rule over that land where Israel is, right? They used to rule over it. It was desolate, but they used to rule over that land. And the British took it away from them. And the Jews started to return there, okay? But they did not want them to become a nation, right? But God would have it that they would become a nation. They have built themselves up to a place where they confide in America because they said they are the only democracy in that era. But now America wants to open up back the Iran deal, right? To give them back money and all these other things, which they already are making the bomb, right? So all they're going to do is just accelerate the process of making the bomb. Okay? I say this lesson about how long can Israel live like this? How much more can they take? Right? No, I'm telling you, the margin is getting very, very slim. Very, very slim. The thread is wearing out, the rope is wearing out to the last thread. It's on the last thread right now, about to snap at any moment. Okay? And what is happening to Israel now with this war that they had just had the other day? This year is a preamble to a far more destructive thing. Okay? Because what they did was, they realized, they said, well, we have so much weapons here right now, we could just destroy Israel. But they have technology about Iron Dome and the fighter planes. How are we going to contend with that? So it's almost, it just reminds me of the story I talk about Bell and the cat. Right? And somebody came up with the idea, so well, if we bell the cat, then the cat can't catch us anymore. Right? And buddy asked, well, who will bell the cat? So they say, now, Israel is there like this cat that is harassing them as a word and so forth. So they said, who's going to bell the cat? But they came up with an idea. They said, well, listen now, if we fire rockets into their territory, we'll fire the rockets. We just fire rockets in there. Fire rockets like crazy inside their territory. They fired, just like a time they were there, over 4,000 went into Israel. Some of them were inaccurate, they fell right back in their territory. But some went through and damaged on Israel's side, despite the Iron Dome. As I said before, right, up at top there in the north, they have 150,000 missiles. And they could have had maybe 1 million by now. Because many times when they were trying to bring in these missiles and think Israel would find out about it. They tried to bomb that place, bomb the truck, do something here to try to prevent it, the stockpile. So the pile could have been higher. But with all of what they've been doing, they have still been able to stockpile, understand, 150,000 rockets. Right? So the point is this, that the 150,000 rockets is far more than enough to wipe Israel off the face of the map. But the thing is this now, just like the wood-bellied cat, how are we going to get inside there when they have things like Iron Dome and fighter planes and all these things? How are we going to get that inside there? Especially the Iron Dome thing. But they're saying now, hey, in everything that man makes, we call a margin of error. So, it's not going to be 100%. Okay? Not going to be 100%. Just like you close your window in your car, right? And you said that, well, my windows are closed, but air is still coming into the car, okay? And you close your doors to your house, right? Air is still coming inside, right? There's this margin of error with everything. There is some margin that something is not 100%, right? It was even 0.01 or 0.001, whatever margin left out. So they say now, we're going to try to get into the margin of error. And so we'll shoot the rockets into Israel, and some of them must go through. Okay? This thing cannot knock down every one of them. So, when this thing is finished here now, don't be silly to think that these men are not going to go back to the drawing board. Right? In fact, they even said that they found some things that Israel shoot against them and must didn't explode. They're going to pull it apart. That's what they did after World War II. Right? They studied out everything that the Germans had. And some of the technology that Germans used, nobody has had it. Okay, but they open these things, these devices. They study them. They want to see what's going on with them. Right? How did this work? And they look at the thing and they say, okay. And they test this and they test that. So I'm saying to you, they're looking back and going back to the drawing board. And they will look at it and say, hey, all right, well, we shot 4,000 rockets into Israel. Okay. And if they might say, well, how many actually made it in there? Because they really don't care where it hit them, as long as it hit them. Okay? And they say, how many made it in? They say, well, we shot one, we didn't even know it. Ended up near their nuclear reactor. Right? So if we had shifted that thing maybe a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, we would have been able to blow it up all together. And there it was, they'd be done. Because they wouldn't have anything to work with. Okay. They can't cover it over that it cannot be attacked. Okay? Because the skies are wide open. Alright? So they're looking at that. I said, well, I mean, hey, we came pretty close. Wow. And I mean, we didn't even know. Right? So they will look at that. They will also look at how they fired these 4,000 rockets and how many of them actually hit inside Israel, how many of them fell back into their territory, and they will look at the ratio. They're not stupid, right? They'll look at all these ratios and they'll say, hey, hold on, but maybe 5% got through, 10% got through. So this Iron Dome is only capable of 90%. Or this Iron Dome is only capable of 95% at best. So, and if it says capable of not, it's well 5% left or 10%. Okay. And if that means if we send enough rockets at them,